The hosts of bracketology are experts in nothing. They claim no advanced knowledge or profound insights. Instead, they are just three judgmental idiots who really like to bloviate their own opinions whenever given the chance. Take what they have to say with a grain of salt, or not at all. You'll probably be better off that way.
You ever seen those Reddit posts and things that are like, you have to survive 100 days in the last video game that you played? What's your likelihood of survival?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What's the last video game you played?
What is the last video game I played? What did we end playing last night?
Fortnite.
Fortnite?
Yeah.
I mean, no one lasts more than like 30 minutes in a game of Fortnite. And it's over.
So you're not going to survive, Dan?
Last video game I played was Star Wars Outlaws. And I feel like I could do okay in a galaxy far, far away.
I mean this in the nicest way possible. But you,
Yeah.
Dan Default,
Mm-hmm.
as an individual, not the character that you play in the game.
Yeah.
You think you could survive in a Star Wars universe?
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, he is from a long, long time ago.
Yeah. I'm halfway there. I'm just not from a galaxy far, far away. Look, the Star Wars universe is absolutely massive. It's an entire galaxy with countless planets and places that you could live. And, you have the seedy underground with the Crimson Dawn and the Pikes and the Hutt Syndicate and all that kind of stuff. And then you just have like regular old people just trying to make a living. I would be one of those regular old people. Like,
I could see you sitting in a jizz bar drinking blue milk.
Yeah.
See, I could see him like hemorrhaging from a nosebleed on Tatooine.
Well, I wouldn't want to be on Tatooine.
Yeah, but like, what's keeping him from doing that today, you know?
What's keeping me from having a Wookiee best friend? Oh, that was a terrible.
Wow, that was
Wookiee
awful.
version.
You know what's
Oh.
keeping you from having a Wookiee best friend? The way that you insult them by trying to speak their language.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, that's cultural appropriation.
Who knows what you just called their mother in that terrible attempt at trying to do the Chewbacca sound?
I would like to apologize to all the Wookiees out there.
I'm going to put out a public statement now.
Are you trying to do that like in your throat or like a tongue roll? Like, where are you trying to make that sound from?
It from my throat. And I don't like this question, this line of questioning. Yeah, see, there you go.
Yeah, that's...
Matt's done a Wookiee before.
You can't say that's untrue.
She was a very nice lady. She just had a hair problem.
Yeah.
So I've been playing this game, Starcom. I don't think I'd last. It's a space exploration game, and it's a lot of fun to play on a keyboard. But I think in real life I would die immediately.
Why?
Well, there's a bunch of factions and stuff in it, and like these like super religious people that just want to destroy you for some reason. I haven't quite figured that part out yet, but I'm pretty sure I would just say the wrong thing and piss somebody off, and they would have a missile directed straight at my face.
So far, I'm not seeing a lot of difference between this game and the real world today, based on your explanation. But
well, in the real world, I don't also have like lasers and plasma rifles.
Okay.
So
okay.
So
But
you don't go around starting shit in the real world.
Generally speaking, I try not to start too much shit.
But it's still, I mean, we got to be careful what we say. Any minute now, those Jewish space lasers could take us out, you know?
Sure. I'm gonna ignore that part. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that there's some games that I think would be really, really fun to live in. Like, I'd love to live in Hyrule, but specifically just in a city that doesn't get attacked by
Ganondorf every couple of years.
I mean, don't all the cities get, like, they all one has a giant dust sandstorm, the other one has like hot lava that you're living in top of, the other one you have to be a fucking bird.
There is a beach city. First of all, I would be a bird if I could.
No, if any one of us is going to be a bird, it's going to be Dan with that beak of his.
I mean this in the nicest way possible. Your nose looks bigger than his in these videos.
Ha ha!
Does it?
Eat that.
It does.
Dick.
That's
It
fair.
looks more beak-like, at least. Look. There's a beach town in Breath of the Wild that I would love to live in. I would love to reside there.
All right, so if you get to pick the video game you live in, is that your pick?
Oh, I don't know if that's my pick. So I actually had this conversation with some friends at work, but it was more just like fictional. So I think if we narrow it down to video games,
Would Leisure Suit Larry count?
it could if you're a pervert.
So yes, it counts. I mean, look, if that's the path we're going, I want to live in the Tomb Raider universe, but specifically, I just want to be Lara Croft's
bra.
She can be my sugar mama. I'll hang out in the mansion while she goes and does her explorations, and I'll be there to welcome her when she gets home.
Sure. Yeah. I do think that if I had to go, I'm just going to zoom past that. So if I had to live in a video
I feel like everything
game
I'm
world,
saying is getting ignored here. You zoom past all of it. Anyway, if you had to live in a video game.
all right. So when I was talking with my people at work about this, I landed on Digimon as the fictional location that I would want to live because it's like Pokemon. You get a companion, but it can talk to you. So that's more fun. Less indentured servitude than Pokemon. More partnerships. But you still get like the fun evolution and like the fireballs being breathed out. Problem is that Digimon games kind of suck.
Yeah.
So I think I'm gonna go with Yu-Gi-Oh! The Yu-Gi-Oh! Video games is what I'd like to live in.
And Dan, what was yours?
Oh, if we can choose, then I think I might go Pokemon. Although I would be ostracized because I would be raging against the fact that we are basically having cockfights with Pokemon, and I'm not a big fan of any animals getting hurt for entertainment purposes.
I think you'd also be derided for your pronunciation of the species.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Look, I'm going to be ostracized either way, but I could absolutely see myself like having a Pokemon farm and just having all of these wonderful animal friends.
All right, now this brings up another question that I want to ask so badly, which is just like, what is your Pokemon companion picked by the others? Because I think, Dan, you would have a Pharaoh.
I don't know what that means. You're laughing at a joke I don't get.
I know. I'm one of 4 people that are going to understand this and laugh at it. Maybe it's a big bird.
So if I got to choose, mine would be an Eevee.
You don't get to choose; they get to choose you.
I'm just saying. Scott's would
Diglett.
be Scott's would be whatever the one with the big tongue is.
Lickitung?
Yeah, Lickitung. That's Scott's.
Why?
Oh.
Because Scott has a big tongue. Have you seen his?
No.
Oh God, Jesus Christ! Your tongue is huge.
Dude, my dentist, I used to have a dentist when I lived up in the Littleton area. You would get so pissed at me because my tongue would get in the way. She would get the wooden stick, like tongue depressors, and like force it down. She was like, your tongue is so huge. Get it out of the way. I'm like,
Well,
I can't do anything.
Scott's tongue erections aside.
You guys are fucking nerds. I'm taking the boobs and short shorts. Lara Croft, daddy's home. Like, let's go.
Yeah, but then you'd have to deal with that shambling old, like...
Butler who brings me stuff so I don't even have to get off the couch? Well, yeah. Oh, no.
Oh no.
Hello and welcome back to Bracketology, the podcast that definitively decides all things tournament bracket style. I am definitely not a murderous animatronic, Scott Grubb.
It's dangerous to go alone. Take me with you. I'm Matt Robison.
And I am your favorite squirt hole, Dan Default.
This week, we continue with round 2, part 2 of our best video game franchise. If you're still here after that troubling introduction. Excuse me, again, as we've reiterated, second best video game franchise. As everyone has pointed out numerous times, yes, we know Mario is not on the list. We're going to be talking about him again Monday, March 10th, live stream on Twitch, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Best Mario game. Come check it out. Hang out with us live. Help us influence the vote. It'll be a good time.
Do we have a favorite for that? Like, I know that we're going to save it for then, but do you have a favorite in your mind? You don't have to say what it is.
Yes.
Of what is the best Mario game?
Indubitably.
Yeah, I think so. I think like I'm open for the debate and the conversation, and I think like figuring out what those 16 will be is interesting. But like in my head, there's at least a top 3 that I can say like stand out.
I think I'm going back and forth between a few. Anyway, that's something to look forward to on March 10th.
Yoshi's Cookie was a masterpiece. Anyway, that sounded more. Anyway, we're moving on. This week, round 2, part 2. We're on the west side of our bracket. You guys said last week that there are 3 out of these 4 matchups that you're not excited to talk about. Grand Theft Auto versus Five Nights at Freddy's seems to be the only one that we're kind of met on. Do we just want to get it out of the way and then hit the meat of it with the rest of these 3?
Sure.
All right. Grand Theft Auto versus Five Nights at Freddy's. Where do we stand on this matchup?
I mean, longevity-wise, Grand Theft Auto has that in the bag. Like, Five Nights at Freddy's is still very recent, very new. I don't think that we should penalize people for, like, or penalize games for not having been created before the time they were created. But I just don't see Five Nights at Freddy's as having as much of a long-term impact as Grand Theft Auto has had.
Sure. I think Five Nights at Freddy's, I think we talked about it before. In the short time frame that it's been around, it has like 17 some games or something out. It's so much churn and burn. They're cheaply made games. Their impact is certainly significant. The branding and the awareness at the of kids, the number of stuffed animals and all that stuff, the action figures, everything that goes along with it, the memification of Five Nights at Freddy's is definitely significant and huge. But when you're talking about replayability and innovation and the longevity, there's not much of a debate here.
I mean, was there another game that combined driving, shooting, beat 'em up before Grand Theft Auto really existed?
But then you get into 5, right? You
And
can
the multiplayer online.
You can play golf. You could in other iterations, you could play darts. You could go bowling. You can go to the strip club. You can, maybe that last is not a great example, but there's so much you can do in those universes, and it knows what it is. It leans into it extremely well. I think this is another one of those kind of like we did in the first round. Like, guys, what are we really talking about? This one's Grand Theft Auto.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get down with either of these games realistically. Like, I've played Grand Theft Auto games. They're just not my go-to. I just don't, which is interesting because it's close to open world, and I do like open world role-playing games in a lot of ways, but Five Nights at Freddy's I'm just never going to pick up. Like, I could pick Grand Theft Auto back up again. Five Nights at Freddy's it's not there. So
GTA 6 is coming, within the next 5 to 10 years.
In the near to distant future.
Oh, my anxiety level waiting for that game is so high. I cannot wait.
All right. Well, we've got our first winner of round 2 on the west side then.
We need to make sure we have multiple episodes banked and recorded for GTA 6 or prior to that game coming out, because once it does, YouTube will cease to exist for at least a month.
Sure. Yeah, that's how most of my relationships go.
Yeah, just come and go. All right, you guys, I think are pretty nervous about some of these next matchups. Where do you want to start? Where do you want to get into it?
My vote is just we go down from here, do the Halo versus Sonic, then move up to the top of the bracket and
All
come
right.
down.
All right.
Because the one I least want to talk about is Zelda versus Final Fantasy.
All right, Halo versus Sonic. What do we
All right.
think?
Well, let's talk about our categories for a while, right? Longevity, in terms of length of franchise, like how long it's been out, Sonic definitely has the win on that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, going back to what I just said in the previous one, I do think that Halo has from a replayability perspective, I think it has a little bit of an edge on Sonic there. I think that people are going to continue to go back to Halo. Mind you, it's kind of dropped off in the last little while, but like Halo was the big shooter for a very long time.
Yeah.
Sonic, like the last Sonic game, you could bend me over a washing machine. I won't know when that came out.
Why would okay? That's an interesting turn of phrase, I guess. I feel like when I'm thinking about this, Halo, like you said, I mean, Combat Evolved and then 2 and 3, like those games maybe defined the multiplayer first person or third person. It defined those games and like the multiplayer shooter maybe even more than Call of Duty for a period of time. Like Halo was the one, right? It was the one you took your Xbox and a backpack to your friend's house to do LAN parties with. Like it drove that whole culture and that whole behavior. But both of these I feel like share an unfortunate similarity in that
Took a back seat to something else.
and yeah, and there's a question of like, is there anything else they can do with these? Like Sonic is such a simple formula, and they've brought him into 3D, and they've had him at the Olympics, and they've put him in whatever racing game. But like the core game and idea of what Sonic is such a simple game that is there really much more that they can do with Sonic to keep the longevity going? And again, movies and familiarity and all that, he's certainly going to be around for a long time. Halo, I think, also kind of reached that point where, it's not like anything spectacularly new with Halo has come out. They've just re-released things from the past and are kind of leaning on a nostalgia factor to continue to be relevant in today's conversation.
What an interesting argument.
What?
I'm just
just these two against each other? Because
not just Halo kind of relying on nostalgia, not really doing a whole lot of innovation within its own game. Such an interesting argument.
I think from within like an innovation and like a continued longevity standpoint, they both have kind of peaked. But Halo, it certainly wasn't a flash in the pan. You can't say that, but its onset to peak was a lot faster than Sonic's.
Well, and I do think that. I mean, the thing that Halo has going for it, and I'm not an expert by any means, I don't think we have the Xbox today without Halo. I don't think that console would have been as successful as it was without Halo. It would have needed another flagship franchise in order for Xbox to move from the original Xbox to the 360 to something else like that. That really carried it in a lot of ways and kept the console wars going between Xbox and PlayStation. If it wasn't for Halo, PlayStation would have won that handily.
I mean, some might say that PlayStation still wins it handily, but
Yeah, but we're not listening to you.
Now that we're talking about consoles, though, I think one of the things that we might want to take into consideration is that Sonic was a Sega franchise, right? And when the Genesis came out, Sonic was its flagship game. And that lasted all the way up until, sadly, the Dreamcast and the subsequent Sega moving out of the console-making business. That definitely impacted both the quality of the games, but also it kind of benefited the availability of the games because Sega went back to just making games, and now Sonic can be played on Nintendo, on PlayStation, on computer. So it opened up that IP, but the games themselves, like the Sonic game that came out for the Sega Dreamcast, had some really cool 3D parts, but the actual entirety of the game is kind of poopy dukes. And then I don't know who it was that was talking about the last Sonic game that was created, but it came out in 2024, Sonic Shadow Generations. And again, it was a game because Sega just makes games now that was open on almost every major console.
Sorry,
The
what was
fact-
it called again?
Sonic X Shadow Generation.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the fact that, that's not a game that I think any of us have played kind of talks to the decline of Sonic as a video game.
Do either of you, so you played Sonic, right? At one point or another.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Sonic character other than Sonic himself?
I mean, I was always partial to Knuckles.
Same girl.
Sonic has such a crazy, huge cast of characters. Not all of them playable, but,
I mean, the lore that exists within Sonic is wild. Like, there's a ton
mind-boggling.
of it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, here's my argument. Sonic has a ton of characters, but I think everybody that's ever played a Sonic game has a favorite Sonic character. Like, I love Knuckles. I also love Shadow. I think that it's a cool, like, doing the antithesis of your main character, similar to what Mario did with Wario, except that went down a little bit more of a humor route. I think that that's a fun trope in a lot of games. With Halo, you've got Master Chief, and you have the computer.
Cortana.
But outside of that, like, is there I guess there is the one alien guy who comes to your side in one of the Halo games. I don't know. I feel like Sonic's reach is a little bit stronger right now in my eyes.
But is that purely just from it's been around so long standpoint, or
It's possible.
There's tons of video games that have been around that long, like, Earthworm Jim, but that's not hitting the cultural zeitgeist like Sonic is. Toe Jam and Earl, there's a bunch Battletoads, right? There are a bunch of video games that have been around as long or longer than Sonic that are not relevant now. Sonic, to its longevity, even though it came from a company that no longer makes like consoles, it has found a way to remain relevant. And I think that there's something to say about that.
do we feel like it's minimizing the Sonic legacy to say, yeah, but it's just a side scroller but faster?
Well, and I do think that personally, I think that does minimize it a bit, because I think that a side scroller, and I think it slowed down in recent years, but for a while, I think we were seeing a revival of old school platformers and side scrollers and, things like that in terms of just the aesthetic that people like in video games. And without Sonic, I don't think that you have the same formula available for that revival. Whereas Halo, I mean, the most important things from Halo to me, Red versus Blue, fucking hilarious,
Oh yeah.
right? The sticky grenades and the sword. But outside of those three things, like, what has there been?
But do you remember how great it felt to hit somebody with one of those sticky grenades, like, perfectly?
Absolutely.
Or sniper shot somebody with a pistol, because the pistol was the most effective sniper in the game. Like, I don't know.
I think To me, I could go either way. So I really just want to go through the 4 criteria that we're using to judge and just see which one beats out the other one. So longevity.
I feel like Sonic has that. I think they have the edge in longevity, not just from the amount of time that it's been out, but again, how long is it going to last?
And the relevance of it, right?
Yeah.
Like Sonic is still very relevant today.
I think that's helped a little bit with the movies for sure, but
a movie's not getting made if it's not relevant enough to make money off of.
yeah, you're not wrong.
All right.
Well, but Halo has a TV show, right?
Did they?
Yeah.
What, Red versus Blue?
No, there was an actual Halo TV show.
Oh, there was. You're
Television
right.
series, yeah.
Totally forgot about that.
It was canceled after 2 seasons.
That sounds right. But they also did live action.
Yeah.
Which, okay, accessibility.
I think since Halo is still just an Xbox IP, Sonic gets accessibility because it's available in every major console.
I mean, I think that Halo, it's available on PC as well, right? Like it's not
Right.
just Xbox, but it is still limited in that way. I also think, again, from a reach perspective, accessibility is not just what console can you play it on or what platform can you play it on, but also just how fan base, etc. I think Sonic is a little bit more attractive there. Innovation. I mean, I do think that Halo innovated, to Scott's point earlier, it innovated the multiplayer genre. It innovated, the
First-person shooter, really.
yeah, well, and unique weapons, right? Like Halo started with unique weapons. You had a regular assault rifle, but you also had the needler, and you had some other ones, the sword and the sticky grenade, that really eventually kind of gets brought into a lot of other franchises.
Can we think of an earlier example of a game that had such a strong single player story, but also had such a strong multiplayer element?
Yes.
Like from a multiplayer story, element, GoldenEye certainly like precedes Halo and was incredibly influential, but no one gave a shit about the GoldenEye story mode.
Yeah, I disagree with you on that.
Yeah, I 100% disagree with you on that.
I loved the story. I still, to this day, when I play a shooting game, generally, I only want to play the story. So that makes a difference for me. And yeah, GoldenEye was more like, I think the fame for GoldenEye comes from the multiplayer, but I thought the story was pretty damn good. Man, that one where you have to you get the little mines that you have to throw up everywhere in the bunker, like the nuke bunker in GoldenEye. Whew. But you're not wrong. To your point, Scott, I do think that Halo it balanced those two things tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
But
right?
Going back to the 4 criteria, so longevity and accessibility go to Sonic. I think we can say innovation probably goes to Halo.
Right.
And then what about replayability?
So this one's hard for me, I think, because when if I want to pick one of these two up, which is going to be more frequent, that I'm like, oh man, I really want to go back and replay that, it's probably going to be Sonic. However, 2 minutes into it, I'm going to be like, I can't do this. And then I'll stop because of the speed. And it's not that I dislike the game. I think the game's tremendous and I loved it when I was growing up. I just think that I don't process it the same way. Like, I don't play video games the same way that I did when I played Sonic.
I think the fact that that the 3 of us play Fortnite as much as we do, and that we've continued to play games like Call of Duty and all that into our middle age, is informed by the fact that we played Halo in the past, and the replayability that came with Halo. I mean,
to that point, though, Halo still is a game that you can pick up and play, but we actively choose to play Fortnite or Call of Duty.
But we're not actively choosing to play Sonic either.
But what I'm saying is, of that genre, like, Halo is not the one that we are going to pick up, right? If you want to play a good side-scrolling game, Sonic might be the one that you go back to.
I'm gonna play Donkey Kong before I play Sonic.
Yeah, I'm gonna play that new Prince of Persia game I've got recently. Before
I hear what your argument though is, Dan.
Between these two franchises, if I'm gonna revisit something, I've got Halo Infinite, I have the Master Chief Collection. I'm much more likely to be like, guys, why don't we just randomly download Halo 2 and play it? You know, like I think replayability for me is Halo still.
But the accessibility would mean that I wouldn't play because I don't have enough.
Because you made a poor decision.
You have a gaming PC which is capable of playing Halo. You could play Halo if you wanted to.
All right, so let's say hypothetically these are even
We got
in
two
these
for
4
two.
categories. So then what box are you going to grab? If it's in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. So crazy development here. I don't know if you guys have been paying close attention, but on our screen there's a little icon for a chat. And somehow, unbeknownst to me, we actually have somebody watching us live as we're recording this, which is new. We've never had this before. But they commented, and I just confirmed per GameSpot 2 days ago. This was announced just 2 days ago. Halo the Master Chief Collection is coming to PS5, and when it releases, will also be on the Switch too. So now accessibility has greatly expanded for Halo. We could see a resurgence of Halo in 2025.
Oh, hey. Oh, are we
It's your
streaming on Twitch?
Are you streaming this on Twitch while we're talking?
I think so.
Well, that's good to know.
Wow. All right. Didn't know that was a thing or happening.
Oh yeah, you are live on Twitch right now while we're doing this. That's great.
Who saw that happening?
That's funny.
Spoiler.
I mean, that does. To be fair, that does change things a little bit, though.
But it hasn't come out yet. Look, I say we just go ahead and vote.
It doesn't matter if it hasn't come out yet. It's been announced, and if we're talking about longevity, we're looking toward the future of these franchises as well. That's still a factor. Let's vote.
Yeah.
I'm with you, though. Dan, go ahead and vote.
And so I'm going with Sonic just because I think that, Matt said that Halo was the only reason that Xbox could hang with PlayStation, being an inferior gaming console. You had to have a good flagship. The same can be said about Sonic, Sega, and Nintendo, right? Sonic was the thing that Nintendo don't, and I'm old enough to remember those commercials. I think Sonic's relevance is still very high, considering the game is as old as it is, and yeah, I think Sonic gets my vote.
I think that we left Mario off of this list because we said there would just be no competition. I think of all the things that are on this list, Sonic, just as an individual character in recognition and in worldwide familiarity, Sonic is the next closest thing that we have. But from a video game franchise perspective, I don't think that Sonic has done enough with its gameplay to differentiate it. Mario has been a 2D side scroller, a 3D open world. It's been a puzzle game. It's been all these different things that Sonic has really just stayed really true to its own formula, and I think somewhat to its detriment. Where to me, I feel like Halo was such an influence on what it means to be a multiplayer game and what is successful in a multiplayer game versus what isn't. And a lot of franchises learned from Halo and built their platforms on Master Chief's shoulders. So as crazy as it sounds, because we would, in a lot of categories, we would put Sonic number 2 right behind Mario, but I feel like when we think about the franchise as a whole in those 4 categories that we've really been discussing, I'm gonna say Dan is a poo-poo headed butt face, and that Halo is my vote.
Why you got to go after me personally?
It was unrelated to anything else. It just felt like the right thing to say.
All right, so Halo and Sonic, 1 vote each. Man.
You're between
All right.
a blue hedgehog and a blue laser sword, plasma sword.
So I'm gonna think about this as in a little bit of a different way. If a brand new version of these games came out tomorrow,
Mm.
and I had to buy one of them, which would I be more excited to buy? I think that Sonic has the nostalgia factor. It has I have a ton of really good memories of playing Sonic games. Halo, I have some memories and some good times with Halo as well. But I mean, I've tried to go back and play the Master Chief Collection and replay the first couple Halo games, and it doesn't hit the same way that it did when I played it before. But I think that a Sonic game would have to do a lot more to get me to buy that game outright.
Mm-hmm.
Like it would have to change its format in some way to get me interested enough to buy it. And I think that with Halo, I think the storytelling abilities that the Halo games and Bungie did, especially for a long time, I think would be a much better sell for me right away. I think I'm gonna have to vote for Halo. No disrespect to Sonic, I do love Sonic, but I think that moves Halo up.
Nice. Ooh, that's gonna be a tough one next week.
That's going to be a
Grand
tough
Theft Auto
one.
versus Halo.
All right, up to the top.
Speaking of tough, we're gonna keep going. We got 2 more difficult matchups here. First up, Pokemans. You degenerate. Versus Elder Scrolls.
So here's my thing, and this is last week when we were talking about like matchups not looking forward to. The reason that this one is definitely towards the top of that list is because I love both of these franchises.
Yeah.
Like I've put more time, probably the only game I've put more time in than Elder Scrolls is Fortnite, and that's just because that's all Dan can play.
It's all Dan can figure out how to get running.
Well, to be fair, it's also the only thing that Scott wants to play. So
That's not true. I play Rocket League with you too.
you do. I mean, Dan plays Rocket League with me too.
Yeah. I
And I-
literally played Rocket League with you just last night.
I played Helldivers with you last night.
That's true.
You're welcome.
However, I love Elder Scrolls. I think that the lore and the story of Elder Scrolls is so fucking good. And here's the thing. It is what I want in a video game, which is open world, magic, punch people, sword fighting, cats that can speak, lizard people. Like all of it is just the Elder Scrolls is a tremendous franchise. It is so good. And again, talked about this in the first round. I've been waiting so long for Elder Scrolls 6, and I just want it to come out.
Same.
But Pokemon, man, this is some of my earliest childhood memories of getting into something so much on my own. Like I played a ton of Mario, right? I played a lot of Sonic. I played a lot of even like the fucking Sega Genesis Lion King game. Like I played a lot of those, but those were with people. Those were with my family. Those were with my
No
friends.
way. No one played a lot of that game. No one got past the second level of that fucking Lion King game.
I got past the second level in that
Yeah,
game.
so did I.
Um,
People that don't suck at video games got past that level.
Dude,
I
the
still
giraffes.
I have the what is it, Aladdin and Lion King. They put them in a bundle for the Switch. I have that shit. I've tried replaying it. I think I did get to I might have beat the giraffe. That shit is still hard.
It's
Yeah.
so hard. But I
Dude, the
did that.
Aladdin game, flying through on the magic carpet as you're trying to escape the cave. Yeah.
I was there like 35 playing these games. Like, this was for kids? Like, this is terrible.
But Pokemon was that caught me, right? Like I was fully swept up in the Pokemon wave. Like the card game, the red and blue, like the stupid rumors that Mew actually existed if you use strength on a truck that existed on this random island somewhere. Like all of that, I was bought in. I love Pokemon. I still do. I mean, to this day, I have a favorite Pokemon, and I've got a favorite starter, and they're two different games or two different Pokemon. So this is really hard for me because I love both of these franchises so much.
So when Pokemon originally came out, you had to catch them all. How many were there?
150.
150, right? Now, how many Pokemon are there?
There's no Pokemon. There's none.
How many Pokemon are there?
Thank you. There are 1,176.
Yeah, give or take. Look,
I actually don't know if that's the right number.
And I don't think it's nearly that high.
I
But
think it is. It's definitely higher than that.
Really?
As of 2024, there are 1,025 Pokemon in the National Pokedex.
so
Oh,
not
damn,
that
okay.
high. All right.
I was
However-
close still.
However, no, hold on. However, the total number of Pokemon increases with regional variants, Mega Evolutions, and Gigantamax. Pokemon.
Gigantamax.
Oh, that makes more sense. Gigantamax Pokemon included, which brings it the total to 1,164.
Which is not very far off from my initial.
No, not at all. Quite close, actually.
The point that I was trying to make is that it feels like outside of Pokemon Stadium and
Snap.
how they updated the game for the Switch, when the newest iteration came out. It's still, you're running around, you're catching animals, and then you're fighting those animals against other animals. You're getting badges. Like, all of that has stayed pretty much the same. Elder Scrolls, to me, has really, you're in different worlds, you're fighting different factions.
You're not in different worlds. You're in the same world.
Well,
You're just in
yeah.
different continents or parts of the continent.
Different parts of the world, and you're fighting different factions, and they add new elements to that game and new classes and new abilities. Look, I love Pokemon, and again, it was a game that I absolutely played. I didn't get into the card game, but I loved the Game Boy games. I had both versions, and there was innovation, like when you could trade Pokemon with another person using that cable through the Game Boys. That was legit. And again, another evolution of video games. But to me, this is something that, I think Pokemon is, as an IP, probably the bigger of the two, but we're not just talking about the IP. We're talking about the video game franchise. And Pokemon, I don't think, has ever won Game of the Year. Elder Scrolls has.
I don't know how much that really influences me. No.
I mean, think of from a replay. So innovation, I will give you that the general core of the game is fairly similar, right? Catch Pokemon, you battle people, you get gym badges, you go to the Elite Four, you move on from there. But I will say that with the lack of accessibility, I will fully acknowledge that accessibility for Pokemon is horrid. You can only play on a Nintendo system, period.
Unless you're helping them collect data through
hold on.
Pokemon Go.
Oh, yeah, timeout. Pokemon Go was the biggest craze when it first came out. It was on every mobile device and I don't
Yeah.
mean like it was available on every mobile device. I mean every person in the world who had a mobile device had Pokemon Go on it. Like, I mean,
I'm not gonna. I agree with you. I'm
and
thinking more the traditional games, and that is important. And Pokemon Go is huge, and I don't want to take that away from it. What I'm getting at is like the initial Pokemon games, like the core Pokemon games. You have to play on a Nintendo device.
Correct.
I would give many parts of people's bodies to be able to play a real Pokemon game on Xbox or PC for that matter, right? Like Pal World was successful because it was available on something that wasn't Nintendo. But I do think from an innovation perspective, they did as much as they could while staying true to the game to innovate with the 3DS and going into 3D stuff, the DS and having multiple screens, the Nintendo 64 and having Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Snap, which is a completely different genre of game where you're not doing the same things. I'd say that innovation still existed as much as it possibly could for Pokemon, considering how exclusive it was.
well, and then there was also the adventure game Detective Pikachu,
There was
which
Detective
is
Pikachu, plus you had all the dungeon games that existed.
yeah, and I mean that's not the same. That's a Pokemon game. That's not the same type of game. You're not doing the same things in that game.
And then, I mean, then you get into like the most recent Pokemon games with Pokemon Legends with Arceus and it being an open world role playing game where same basic mechanics, but it was a true 3D RPG. I don't know. I feel like this is a lot closer than it seems just on paper. You know what I mean?
I, I think it. I think if we're talking like best media franchise, no question, Pokemon blows it out of the water, right? When we talk best video game franchise, like I see what you're saying in that like storytelling video game way. Elder Scrolls comes out on top, and yeah, I mean it had a Game of the Year win in the past, but the longevity, the recognition, the replayability I feel like that comes with Pokemon and the sheer worldwide
Phenomenon.
exactly, yeah, that is Pokemon. And then you take that and you know, again, you're talking merch sales, you're talking about movies, you're talking about there are variations to what a Pokemon game is. I think Elder Scrolls like really speaks to the the core gamer aspect, and it triggers the nerdiness for you two. You guys like definitely have nerd boners for it, but I'm prepared to just go ahead and I'm gonna say this as a kind of an outsider to the both of these. My only real experience playing a Pokemon game is Pokemon Go. I never got invested in the others, and Elder Scrolls isn't my jam, so I'm not like personally invested in either of these. But just looking at them as the worldwide impact and appeal that they have, Pokemon comes out on top, in my view.
I'm gonna disagree with you. Elder Scrolls it predates first Elder Scroll game came out in 1994. First Pokemon game came out 1996. So Elder Scrolls has more longevity. I
Did,
think Elder
did either of you
Scrolls.
play that first Elder Scrolls game?
I
Yes.
have played it.
Okay.
Yeah. Elder Scrolls, I think, wins in the innovation category because not only did it, the first person awesomeness that is Elder Scroll and that gameplay is fantastic, but Elder Scrolls also has the online game that is really, really good, allowing you to, build a world with your friends online, which is not really something that Pokemon is known for. Look, I like the IP of Pokemon, and if it was just talking about the intellectual property, it would definitely win this. But we are talking about video game franchise, and Elder Scrolls has just been a more dominant force in video games, and I think it has the awards to back that up. Elder Scrolls gets my vote.
So this goes exactly the way that I thought that I didn't want it to. I mean, I think that
should have spoke faster than Dan.
Yep.
I guess. I mean, the problem is that I'm still on the fence. I think that Pokemon as a franchise, as a video game franchise, I think that it gets derided a little bit too much because I do think that it's been innovative in a lot of ways. I think that it has it has captured more than just walk around, capture Pokemon, battle. Like it's more than just that. And not just the IP as a whole, but the video games themselves. They inspire. I would struggle to come up with a competitor in terms of the number of ROM hacks that exist where people have just made their own version of a game than Pokemon. Like I've played a ton of them. Don't sue me, Nintendo. I didn't make them. But I think that alone and the inspiration that exists from Pokemon, like I can't tell you the number of times I've looked for anime where I'm like, I want to find an anime like Pokemon where there's a person and a monster and they're partners and they have a good relationship and they do things together. Kind of hard to find that's not like super kiddie. But I want that. You know what I mean? Like that, and I think that's born from Pokemon. Elder Scrolls has the story, they have the world built. And while the first Elder Scrolls game wasn't exactly groundbreaking, like if you go back and play it today, no one's going to have a ton of fun. But if you go back and play Morrowind right now or Oblivion, man, I'd struggle to find a better storytelling game than Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. It is just, it's chef's kiss. Now, when you talk about replayability, people, look, they've remade Skyrim 73 times. They've re-released it. And that's because people replay it over and over again. However, from a Pokemon's perspective, there are people that still, to this day, have a life goal of obtaining every single Pokemon. They want a complete national Pokedex. Like, that's just, like, there are tons of people out there that are doing that.
There were people who flew to Japan to be able to play Pokemon Go because there were regional Pokemon you could only get there.
Yeah.
And that's Pokemon Go. That's not even like, a core game.
The main
that's
game. I think here's what edges one out more than the other for me.
Edge me. Let's go.
It is the I think it's the change to how you grow that pushes Elder Scrolls over the top for me. Simply the change from you get experience for fighting to you get experience for doing the things that you're leveling up. I think that innovation alone, I think, pushes Elder Scrolls over just enough. Because if you want to be the sneakiest person in the world, all you got to do is sneak a ton. If you want to be the best sword fighter in the world, all you got to do is sword fight a lot, which means that you're going to get your ass kicked sometimes. I think that functionality, I'm going to vote for Elder Scrolls.
I'm good with it. I think what you're saying in this, and it makes sense to me, is that you recognize as like we said, as a media property, Pokemon is huge and it's bigger. But we're putting weight and emphasis on the video game aspect of this, the video game franchise, and to you guys, that's where Elder Scrolls stands out. I just don't have the familiarity with it enough, and Elder Scrolls is just not my kind of jam to be able to say that. So, as the outsider, I'm seeing the entire media property, but I totally get where you guys are coming from.
I do also just have to say this for the record. Skyrim is the least. It's the least of those three main Elder Scrolls games. Like, give me Oblivion, then give me Morrowind, then give me Skyrim. Like, I kind of want to piss people off on this. I love dragons, but Skyrim's the worst of those three games in the Elder Scrolls franchise. Just throwing that out there. Come at me. Get in the comments.
Get in the comments. Talk about it.
All right, next.
Speaking of stuff to talk about, what do we got, Dan?
Oh man, this is the matchup that I did not want to talk about because these are two of my favorite franchises.
What's got your butt hurt? And on an unrelated note, what is our next matchup?
You have Zelda versus Final Fantasy. So Zelda, the story of Princess Zelda and Link and all of their different iterations, because they are cyclical characters. They
I think
reappear.
it's important. I think it's important to talk about just in that moment that the Zelda franchise is truly the story of Zelda through Link's eyes.
It's the story of Link. It would be like calling the Mario games Princess Peach.
Oh, I disagree with you on that. Zelda is the most important character in that entire universe.
The Legend of Princess Peach. And then you play as Mario for 40 levels.
Oh, okay. Well, we can disagree on that. Continue, Dan. Sorry.
But so Zelda is a continuation of, the same characters throughout different times in Hyrule's history. You get to play in different worlds, right? You got Hyrule, and then you have the underworld version of Hyrule, and all of these different places that have become iconic in their own way. Final Fantasy is kind of a wide variety of different stories, but it is an action, turn-based RPG where you get to find different characters, add them to your party, develop them to do, their most powerful attacks. You have to have a healer, you have to have a tank, and all of those things kind of came from Final Fantasy. These two powerhouses, it's hard for me to pick which one I should vote for because I love them both.
How far back does your love for them both go?
I mean, so I definitely, the first Zelda on NES was the first video game that I really remember like falling in love with. I loved the open concept and how you could tackle the dungeons in a variety of different orders and all of the different like things hidden around the map. You burn this bush and it opens up a secret cave where you can get, this thing. And that open exploration was so innovative. But then Final Fantasy III was, my first kind of run into that RPG, right? The real true RPG where you do things, you gain levels, and, also the turn-based aspect was really cool back then. And that kind of fueled my love for other, turn-based RPGs, right? I don't know if either of you ever played Chrono Trigger, but is one of my favorite games too. All that kind of spawned from Final Fantasy. But Zelda definitely predates my Final Fantasy infatuation.
Scott, do you have any initial thoughts on this one?
I already know what my vote for this one would be, and I have a hard time believing that it's going to be swayed. So I don't know how far into that path you want me to go. Just get it out there, lay it out there now, and let you two debate back and forth. What about you? How do you feel, Matt? Where do you lean on a scale?
I think I lean for sure one direction over another. I have more history with Final Fantasy, like in terms of if we're talking about because I played the Zelda games when I was a kid, but they didn't capture my attention. Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8, like I was definitely in on those because those were PlayStation. They were absurd graphics for the time. Like they were, the full cinematic cutscenes, the dope sword gun, like cool weapons.
Games
However,
so big you needed 2 discs to play them.
right. However, with Final Fantasy, that was about the end of any of my fandom of Final Fantasy was around Final Fantasy 7 or Final Fantasy 8. I'm not a big turn-based combat person. And then my love for the Zelda franchises really only truly kicked in with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I loved Ocarina of Time. I loved Majora's Mask. I played those, but those were like blips in terms of my video game experience compared to so many other games that existed. And I think part of that is because Pokemon took such a center stage for me that I didn't play as many console games as I did, the handhelds. I don't know. So it's almost like a tale of two different stories. Final Fantasy I had earlier and I was excited about more early on, but today Zelda gets me more turned on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's funny because I think a lot of people looking at this matchup would see the magical, fantastical elements and think that they're very similar, but I think we're talking about two very different games and overall franchises.
Yeah.
Wildly, even within the RPG space that both of these exist in, they're wildly different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll go ahead and get mine out there. I'm with you that my love for Zelda was non-existent prior to Breath of the Wild. I really had I knew what it was and who the characters I knew who Link and Zelda were, and that was about it. And when Breath of the Wild came out, I was very skeptical about it, but heard so much positive. I was like, okay, I'll dip a toe into this. And then,
Next
hundreds
thing you
of
knew,
hours
you were
later,
up to your nose.
yeah, hundreds of hours later, and then Tears of the Kingdom right behind it. And I mean, just as good. It's so hard to, I think, for any franchise, any media property to have a sequel that follows as well as that one did. Final Fantasy, though, I think you're right that it definitely had a heyday with 7, 8, 9. I know 11 was incredibly popular. I think it fell off a little bit. I think there are certainly audiences for some of the later games too. I think, was it 13 that had the emo boys and whatever in it? I don't know. But for me, and this is more a specifically personal take, turn-based combat has never made sense to me. I don't think I'll ever enjoy a game that has that. It's not how real life works. I don't know why anyone would make a game with turn-based. It just in my maybe I focus too much on a logical side of things, but I can't imagine people standing opposed to each other, walking over, slapping one of them, and then walking back and standing in your spot and just waiting for the next thing to happen. That's just not what combat is. To call turn-based combat is a nonsense term to me. So yeah, the lineage with Zelda is there. The way that those games inspired adventure games and storytelling games from its iteration and beyond. For me, I think Zelda has had a greater impact on the video game industry as a whole. I'm not entirely sure Final Fantasy exists in its environment without the inspiration of Zelda and its storytelling capabilities and all that. So for me, I think my vote goes to Zelda.
I mean, I think one of the things that Final Fantasy did, and I think does a really good job, is having, even though, to what Dan said earlier, each of the games is its own world, right? Almost, and each of the games has its own history. Each of the characters have their own experiences and lifetimes that led them up to it. And, being in a steampunk-esque world versus being in a very high magic, low technology world, like those both exist within Final Fantasy. One of the things they do really well is continuing characters, right? Or continuing themes across each of their games. But I do just think in today's age, I just don't think turn-based combat is the same thing that it was at that point, right? Where you kind of had to rely on your system. Like, I feel like turn-based combat was a thing from the system in a lot of
like
ways.
a system limitation?
In a way, and I don't know that
Sure.
for sure, but just the way that I kind of look at it, not to take the decision completely out of Dan's hands, but I gotta say Zelda is the greater franchise. And it goes back to something that we've talked about with a couple of these other things. Like, it's not just Link, right? Link is a part of the Nintendo universe. It's part of Smash Brothers. He's a part of, but so's Zelda, and so's Ganon, and so are these like absurdly prescient characters and tropes that exist within those stories that it makes sense to carry it along. And realistically, find another game. Sorry, now I'm getting passionate about this. Find another game or another franchise that exists, not even just in gaming, where there are several different timelines that exist and fans are still up in arms about how good it is. You know what I mean?
Right.
They've retconned themselves numerous times where they're like, oh, that was just a different timeline. That was a different universe. That was something else that didn't happen to this Link. Yet somehow it still all makes sense, and the games put it in there.
Everyone's like, okay, well, I like this enough. That's fine.
Right.
There's like 3 different timelines within the Zelda universe, and one of which is like adult Link and kid Link. It's crazy to go into, but I actually agree with you guys. I think Zelda gets the sweep here. And as much as I love Final Fantasy and as much as I think it is done for the RPG category, when I think about franchise, you have to look at the totality. And outside of 3, 7, 10, and 11 for Final Fantasy, to which there are many, many more iterations of that game, but those are the only ones that I would consider like top tier best games. I could say almost every entry in the Zelda game in that franchise captures me like that. All the way back to the original Zelda, Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Breath of the Wild. I mean, they're all so good.
What I wouldn't give for them to do a true remaster of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, like that would be.
I mean, can you imagine Switch 2 announces and they put out like a bundle with those 2 games as like remasters together?
And not even just re-release the game, but just remaster it so that it is Breath of the Wild-esque, but with the story of Majora's Mask.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I could get lost in that.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, that does it. We're down to our entertaining 8, and we have some interesting matchups.
Yeah.
That we're going to discuss next week. The way that these things have kind of fallen in, the pieces have fallen in place. I'm excited for us to see this bracket through to the end. As always, we want to thank everyone for sticking around and giving us a listen. Make sure you come back next week for that entertaining 8. We'll get through that whole bracket through that whole wave in our next episode. Consider again giving us a share. Tell your friends to give us a listen. Follow us on all the socials. Engage, like our posts, give us comments. Like we love to hear from everybody. We've got a growing Discord. We love to hear the activity and feedback in there. What you got, Matt?
Well, I just want to, join the Discord. But just another shout out real quick to chili. Like, I just want chili right now. You guys want chili?
I thought you were talking about
Chili
the
healer.
dog from Bluey.
No, I've been in a weird, I want chili, but I don't want to make chili, but I don't want to
So
get
you're
canned
just
chili.
interrupting the end of episode thank yous to
Chili.
the
food.
food. Okay. Do you have a Wendy's nearby? You want to go get some day old
There's not.
hamburgers?
There's not. Anyway,
Okay.
Continue. Sorry.
I appreciate your focus on our podcast we're recording here. Where's your head at? Yeah. Anyway, refocusing. Join us on all the social medias: Facebook, Blue Sky, TikTok, YouTube. Come check out Matt and I while we're streaming live on Twitch. One day we're gonna figure out how to get Dan on there. One of us is just gonna have to go to his house and like. You ever see those things where like people take their grandparents' remotes and they like cardboard cover all the buttons we don't want them to press, and you just leave out like the volume and the power buttons, and that's it? We're going to figure out how to do that for Dan to get Twitch working for him. But in the meantime, come out and join all the conversation. We want to thank Aaron O'Donnell from Aaron O'Donnell Music for the music here at the beginning and end. We want to thank Matt for making wonderful graphics you see at the beginning and end of every episode if you're watching us on YouTube. That it? Entertaining 8 next week. We got the Mario live stream coming up on March 10th. Super excited for that. After this, we should also do a little groundwork here. So we've only got 2 video game franchise episodes coming up after that. What are we going to do? I'm excited for this too.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Oh,
So
wait, are
coming
you
up-
asking us to announce what our next bracket is?
I mean, I'm just doing all the
Or our
talking
next-
here.
yeah, you
what
just
are we
kinda
doing
went
up?
through.
What
Look,
are we doing after?
We've got the best video game franchises, right? We've got the Mario live stream. We've also got Bracketology.
Brackosology.
Yeah. So
Great
we're going to
name.
do some broken formats where we interview each other, and you're going to get to know the hosts a hell of a lot more than the amount that we share already in the hundreds of hours that we've put out.
Maybe
Yeah.
even uncomfortably so.
Yeah. So February 19th, February 26th, and March 5th, kind of as a recognition of our 1-year anniversary of doing this podcast, we're going to break format. We're going to do some special episodes we're calling Brack-Usology. Each week, one of the co-hosts will be in the hot seat while the other 2 are asking questions, doing some interviewing. It'll be your opportunity to really get to know the co-hosts on a deeper, more intimate, at possibly sexual level. So check out those episodes as well. Looking forward to those too. All right, guys, I think that's an episode. What do you think?
I agree.
All right. As always, I was probably not a murderous android. Scott?
Yeah, it's still dangerous to go alone, but I'm going to go home. Matt Robison.
And I'm your favorite starter, Dan Default.
Here's the thing. He is my favorite starter, but not my favorite Pokemon.
Yeah.
On that note, bye-bye.
Bye.